My brothers and I recently sat down to watch the fifth installment in the Predator franchise, Prey. This film is directed by Dan Trachtenberg and is available through Hulu. This is a story about Naru trying to prove herself as a worthy hunter to her tribe when a predator lands in the countryside. Within the first 5 or 10 minutes of the movie, we were jokingly making a guess about how the film would go, and we actually got everything correct, not missing a single detail about either the ending nor the journey leading to it. Prey suffers from ridiculous predictability problems to the point that it became a slog for us to watch the movie. In this video, I want to dive into the concept of predictability in writing as a whole, while analyzing the script of Prey. I think the best place to start this conversation is to recognize the fact that working within the bounds of a genre or franchise carries with it massive amounts of expectations. I have a friend who will immediately disqualify a horror film as a good movie if it doesn't meet the standards of what scares him, which happens to be basic jump scares and atmosphere building. This means he struggles to enjoy more psychological offerings such as Hereditary, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, or It Comes at Night. This is less about the offerings of each individual story as it is his expectations and wishes when he sees a movie marketed under the horror banner. Similarly, people will come in with clear-cut expectations on what a movie should be in a pre-established franchise, which is exactly why a movie like Prometheus failed so spectacularly. They created a film in the Alien series with no aliens or substantial horror elements, which is the core recipe of the original films. Working within a franchise or genre has its own expectations, so abandoning those expectations is often more damaging than making something safe but effective. That being said, in the discussion of Prey being predictable, it's unrealistic to expect the film to lack the core identity of a predator crashing on Earth and rivaling the species around it. The original Predator from 1987 has the advantage of mystery since it's the first in a franchise and we didn't know what the Predator was at the time. That original film presents many of the Predator's abilities, like its sight and senses, in mysterious ways that intentionally holds information from the audience for as long as possible to build fear of the unknown. But Prey, being the fifth entry in the franchise, does not have that same angle to work with. The film must find a balance between both staying true to the franchise while also providing something new and worthwhile. The concept of predictability is understanding what we have been conditioned to. We have to be able to recognize tropes, structure methods, similar production and costume design, uses of dialogue, and common ties in with how it's shot, edited, scored, etc. In the 21st century, we are exposed to more media than ever before, which is making the predictability problem skyrocket because we recognize so much more on a regular basis. Prey actually does quite a bit to separate itself on these external levels from the previous entries. Here are a few major examples. First, the film adopts a tribal coming-of-age structure as its main hook instead of a commando-based military warfare ops. Second, in setting, this is massively different, taking us back several centuries. This mixes up not only the visual aesthetics, but the very nature in which humans have the ability to interact with and fight the predator. Third, the film offers a much stronger and more explicit violent spectacle than either of the two previous entries. It opts for this when it knows it cannot use mystery to its advantage like the original. These are 3 major things they chose to address in the film to give it a sense of its own identity. However, further than just the external separation, there's one more element to this puzzle that's the most important to me: the execution. I have a problem with the way each of these 3 decisions were executed, and that's ultimately what makes it feel predictable to me. An interesting note here is that the second Predator movie shares much of the same DNA as the first, only swapping the setting from the jungle to the city. However, that film is still highly regarded. That is because the moment-to-moment execution of everything it was doing was still satisfying, even if familiar. These notable separations Prey rejoices in are not enough to give the film meaning and emotional poignance. Prey does not have a valuable journey. Just because you may know how the film will end does not inherently make it a worthless journey. That is not what I mean by the predictability problem. It's only logical. Didn't you know that John Keating would be fired from the school for his actions at the end of the Dead Poets Society? Didn't you know that Maximus would have to sacrifice himself in Gladiator? Didn't you know that Luke and the light side would prevail by the end of the original Star Wars trilogy? Didn't you know that Simba would become king? Didn't you know that Andy would escape the Shawshank prison? Each of these endings may be predictable, but that doesn't matter when this is what needs to happen for the story to be meaningful, impactful, and satisfying. Originality is not about finding the concept that no one else has ever dreamt of. It's not about finding a plot twist that no one could have seen coming. It's not about subverting expectations. It is about delivering meaning through a journey. Oftentimes, as seen through M. Night Shyamalan's career, an insistence on twists will more often than not only promote weak, unmoving stories. Let's look back at the 3 external changes that Prey made. Let me explain the shortcomings in them. First, the coming-of-age story is a great idea on paper, but in its current form, it's far too bare-bones to carry any weight. The film begins with Naru, our protagonist, hunting for deer. In her tribe, she has been trained as a healer, and because of her gender is not considered a legitimate or proven hunter, even though that is her passion. She fails to kill this deer and instead accidentally gets her dog hurt. The hunters of the tribe go on a hunt for a lion, and she has forced her way into the group. She nearly secures her victory, but is too unskilled to best the lion. Her brother ends up saving her life and killing the lion himself, being proven and honored in the tribe. Not long after, Naru witnesses the crash landing of the Predator ship in their countryside, so she decides to take it upon herself to hunt the Predator single-handedly to earn the victory that her brother before her has. By the end of the film, nothing about her journey has really changed. She does successfully hunt the Predator and earn her honor and respect, but there are never any other angles added to her character. She never has realizations, new goals, changes of heart, or layers of depth to fill out her character. While she still has a clear-cut goal the entire film, this bare-bones structure to her character ultimately makes it hard for me to recognize her as a real human being. It only makes her more comical that there is hardly any clear progression in her skill building or intelligence. She simply happens to best the Predator in a fight near the end of the movie. I was unable to get emotionally involved in her journey, and I really felt nothing by her success in the end. Second, being a Comanche tribe offers a completely new look into how one would fight the Predator. The lack of mechanized weaponry is the most obvious example. As far as the combat goes, it was pretty interesting at first, except halfway through the movie, the film introduces a group of Frenchmen bearing rifles and pistols. So ultimately, guns are still much of the solution all over again, despite the opportunities they set up for themselves originally. More unfortunate to me, though, is the characterization. In the original Predator movies, they spoke like the times. Whether it was cheesy or not, it's just how people talked back then and it made sense. In this film, we're set in a historical setting, but all of the personalization of these characters is incredibly modernized. Naru and her brother talk like 21st century teenagers would. Their relationships are not grounded in the traditions of their tribe as you would expect. My point is that this exciting choice to take a drastic change in setting, tone, and presentation was backhanded when the authenticity of that was destroyed in execution, which makes it feel far more fake to me than the original Predator film did. Even if the dialogue in Prey isn't a whole lot worse at times, it just made more sense in the original. These modernized elements made the film feel painfully stale and uninteresting.
Who's sneaking?
Who invited you? We won't be gone long enough to need a cook.
Third, the kills in a horror movie such as this are very important, and for the most part this is a strong outing in that department. My main 2 complaints with this side of the film are in the presentation, not the writing as much. I do wish that they would have reverted back to more practical effects, because the digital look of the film doesn't help sell the authenticity of the time period, which it already is fumbling in other areas. On top of that, the sound design really struggles to effectively communicate tension in key sequences. Tension was such an essential piece of the original, but here so many pivotal moments feel hollow because of the cheap sound design. There's a moment where Naru and her brother are hiding in tall grass from the Predator. Suddenly, they realize its crosshairs are on his forehead, so Naru pushes him out of the way just in time. But there's no sound effect for the impact of the fire from the Predator or anything, so it just feels as if he dodged the equivalent of a foam dart. The end of the film, too, is laughably hollow and unmoving because the sound effects are just not there to support what's happening. To end on a more positive note, one of the setups and payoffs that the film did really well was a twist on the idea of concealing your body heat so the Predator cannot see you. In the original, they use mud to conceal themselves. In this film, Naru takes advantage of her healing training and finds a medicinal herb that can cool down the bloodstream, effectively turning her invisible to the Predator. This thread was probably my favorite element of the entire movie, just because it's a new twist on the same concept that took advantage of the time period and settings in pretty interesting ways. It gave me something fun and fresh, while true to the identity of the predator. In conclusion, Prey is very predictable because it fails to communicate a valuable journey and squabbles its interesting elements, fusing them with painfully familiar dialogue and personalization. There are just clashing elements in the film. All of these external elements I've been discussing will help you in your search for originality, but to be truly original is to offer something valuable to the audience through a compelling journey. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Watch the movie to form your own opinion about it. A lot of people disagree with me on this topic, so I'd be interested to see what you have to say. So leave me your thoughts in the comments below. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked the video, or give it a thumbs down if you thought it could have been better. I'll see you next time, guys.